Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Center for Local Prosperity's monthly webinar series. My name is Andy Horsnell. I'm the Executive Director, and I'll be the host this time around. Usually it's our Senior Advisor, Bob Cervelli, but Bob's out of town right now and not available, so I'll be stepping into those shoes. And I just want to introduce my colleagues here, Nike Bainbury, who is the new producer for the webinar series, and our communication coordinator, Olivia Langell, is our program manager. So we're a small but mighty team, and one of the things we're proud to be doing is this webinar series. Today's webinar is we're framing as kind of a deep dive into community economic development investment funds. We did do a previous webinar that featured FarmWorks, so Linda Best and a couple of the companies that they have provided financial support to. I think that was might have been our second webinar, actually. So we thought it'd be a good idea to kind of circle back to the topic and make it a bit more of a on the one hand, a bit more of an overview about CEDIFs, because I think one of the things that became apparent was that a lot of folks just didn't understand the basics of what CEDIFs are. And then on the other hand, I'll also invite Marc Almon in, and Marc will be our guest speaker this time around. Marc is the founder of a new company called Backr, which he'll be kind of providing information about. But Backr is basically, it's a CEDIF funded company, which will help create other CEDIF funded companies. So it'll be a really good. There's Brian Gibson. Yeah, it'll be just a kind of a bit of a balance. So I'm going to actually provide the overview piece, and then Marc will get into the kind of the nuts and bolts of what Backr is going to be doing. What we'll do is we'll do a couple of short presentations. We'll hold questions, and then we'll kind of open it up to questions. If you want to put in the chat at any time, if you have questions or comments you want to make, you can do that anytime, including from now on. And we'll circle back to them after the presentations, but we will get started and then get into that conversation. So without any further ado, I think we're good. Liv, yeah, we can roll. Okay, so I'm gonna just share my screen and then we'll hang on here 1 second. Nike or Liv, can you just let me know that you can see the screen?
Looks good.
Looks good. Yep. Okay. Okay. So this is will be the whirlwind tour of community economic development investment funds, or CEDIFs. So just as an opener, it was estimated in 2018. These are kind of fairly older numbers, and I can only imagine they're larger now. But in 2018, over $934 million was invested by Nova Scotians in RRSPs, but only less than 2% of that actually made it back into Nova Scotian companies. So that's a leakage of over $900 million if you factor the 2% out. That just leaves the province every year in investment, and so CEDIFs were created to help stem that flow. And so CEDIFs they're a government approved investment fund created and owned by community members. So it was created back in 1999. It was unique in the country, and it was designed to channel local money from Nova Scotian investors to Nova Scotian companies, and it uses the equity tax credit program to do that. And CEDIFs can be structured as a corporation or cooperative, really anything that can sell shares in Nova Scotia can become a CEDIF. So why they exist? Really, I think anybody who works in economic development or runs a business knows that it's really hard to get equity investment, and CEDIFs are designed to help with that. And so, and I've already referenced that the wealth leaking out of the province, because it's so easy to invest elsewhere. You think about it, on every street corner, there is someone selling a mutual fund. So this is about creating a way for Nova Scotians to invest in local companies. And CEDIFs, retain local money and investment in the local economy. And so by doing all this, it helps to support economic resilience and preserve local jobs and promote regional development. Now, how it works, a for-profit corporation or for-profit cooperative. So again, the legal structure, the important thing here is that a CEDIF has to be a corporate entity that can sell shares. They apply for status through the Nova Scotia Securities Commission, and they get that ability to go out and publicly promote their business. Those shares are offered publicly to Nova Scotians. So in Nova Scotia, you can sell, you can have a corporation or a co-op, and you can go out and you can sell shares, but only to up to 50 so-called friends and family. Like you can't go publicly sell shares in Nova Scotia beyond that kind of 50 number. Right? But so you're a private company up to that point. If you want to go to the public, the CEDIFs are designed to help you do that, to help you go out into the public and to promote to the broad community. And you can raise anywhere from 10,000 to 3 million per raise through a CEDIF. You need a minimum of 25 investors, and a given CEDIF can raise. It's kind of capped at $6 million over its life. So on the investor side, they get a tax credit from 35 to 65% in Nova Scotia, and that investment capital goes invested into local eligible local companies. And the investors, in addition to getting the tax benefits, can receive dividends to kind of provide additional financial gain. Mm-hmm. Now, the really, really simplified how to set up a CEDIF, like there are many more details to this, but at the most basic level, there are really kind of 4 steps. One is laying the foundation. Like if you don't already have a corporation, you need to have a corporation that can sell shares. You need to have a board to support that corporation. You need to have a sense of what you're going to be doing. You need a business plan, all the things that any company would need. You need to have that foundation laid out. And then you approach the Security Commission to get a letter of non-objection. And that's a kind of weird, kind of double negative that basically it's not an approval. It's the Security Commission saying we're not going to object to you going out to the public to sell shares. And from that moment that they give you that letter, you have 90 days to undertake the raise that you're looking to do. And then once you do that, if you meet your goal, you have to meet. You have like a minimum goal and a kind of a maximum target. If you meet your minimum goal, you disperse the funds usually over 4 years, and that 40, 60, 80 is you need to disperse 40% in your first year, an additional 20 in your second year, an additional 20 in the third year, and you can retain 20% for administration purposes. So you don't have to disperse out all 100% of what you raise. So as I said, there's a lot more details to this than what I'm presenting, but just to give you kind of a broad sweep, I can tell you that if you've got kind of the foundation already set, that second step is where we tend to talk a lot about getting that letter of non-objection, and as Marc will be able to share, it's a fairly can be a fairly tedious and time-consuming task. From a tax credit perspective, so if you're a potential investor, you can get up to a 65% tax credit. So if you're investing $10,000, you can get, as an example, you can get up to $6,500 of that back through saved taxes. If so, 35% on the initial investment, 20% out if you hold on for 5 years, and then additional 10% if you hold on for 10 years. And credits go against provincial tax. And there are RSP eligibility for many CEDIF offerings. So as long as you're selling the kind of eligible shares, and kind of non-par value shares is the specific requirement, you can redirect existing RSP money into toward a CEDIF. So and the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation locally is the resource to manage that. So that if you had, say you had $10,000 in your RSP, you could then transfer it to a self-directed RSP that's coordinated with the Worker Co-op Federation, and then they manage to use that money to buy the CEDIF shares. So for those folks who have that kind of situation and are prepared to kind of move their money around, they can make investments, get those additional tax benefits without even being out of pocket any more additional money. So it's a pretty compelling argument from a tax perspective. From a governance and accountability perspective, CEDIFs are governed by a board of directors. You need to have a minimum of 6, and those 6 all need to be Nova Scotia residents. There's a kind of typical of compliance requirements. So with the government, and it's overseen by the Department of Finance, and there are kind of annual reports required every year. It's pretty tightly regulated. Not as much as if you were a full-on public corporation that had done an independent public offering, but it's pretty tight. The kinds of businesses that can be invested into with CEDIF money are need to be considered active businesses, and that's a CRA designation, and basically it's actively selling goods and services in the community. The real estate rental and investment companies are generally excluded from being active businesses unless they have at least six full-time employees. So they can kind of get around that exclusion. But for the most part, if you look at the types of companies that get invested in through CEDIFs, they're kind of, and I'll provide some examples, but there are regular businesses selling goods and services out in the market. Some notable investee companies to be aware of. These are all companies that have received money. They generally have had CEDIFs kind of behind them to provide to secure the investment. But the ones that you would see in the market that have received that money, pretty diverse. We've got I referenced a couple of wind turbine companies, Scotia Windfields and Wind for All. Both have been CEDIF funded. The Port Pub in Port Williams, Skylit, which is a residential solar installer, was funded through a CEDIF. Just Us Coffee Roasters have done multiple CEDIF raises, so quite a range. There's a full list on the government website. You can see all the companies, but and of course the one you don't see on this list is FarmWorks. Now, FarmWorks isn't an investee company. FarmWorks is actually a CEDIF that invests in other companies. But whereas these that I'm presenting here are just the companies that have received financing. So certainly FarmWorks makes the list of one of the most compelling CEDIFs in the province. So proven impact in Nova Scotia. Over 50 CEDIFs launched since 1999, over $100 million raised, strong track record, especially in renewable energy, food. And it's demonstrated the ability to kind of keep capital local and build wealth. So uh, it's a pretty it's a proven tool that I think if it were resourced better would have much more traction. And it's it's unfortunately not been strongly resourced by the province since its inception. And I think when Marc speaks, we'll see how his company Backr is an attempt to try to rectify that. So just kind of a closing couple of slides here. There was a study done back in 2021 by George Karafillis, who was a prof at Cape Breton University, and came up with some pretty compelling numbers on the economic impact of CEDIFs in Nova Scotia, in terms of job creation, the economic output, employment income, and taxes generated. So even with at a relatively low level in terms of total potential, it's still generated a very significant economic impact. And the final thing I want to just kind of raise people's attention to is there is a really good startup guide for CEDIFs in Nova Scotia, and we will make that available to you. It was actually published by the Cooperative Enterprise Council of New Brunswick when they were working on developing a similar guide for New Brunswick's version of CEDIFs. And it's probably the most comprehensive guide you're going to find on the topic. So we will make that available to you, and it's just something it's not widely available. So we will make sure that you have access to it. So that's my presentation. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to just go right over to Marc, and then we'll open it up for questions. So over to you, Marc.
Thanks, Andy. That was really good. I find myself having to often explain how the CEDIF program works to people again and again, and as part of my presentation for Backr, or my discussion of Backr, and it's so nice to have you kind of go through it step by step and talking about how the system works. Um, so just to introduce myself, my name is Marc Almon. I'm a film producer, social entrepreneur. My background is I've produced a number of projects, films that have won awards and traveled to a number of film festivals. And the process taught me a lot about building big projects and financing them. And as well, I took some of those skills and applied them, and I launched in collaboration with my partner. We raised about $14 million to build the Lighthouse Art Center in downtown Halifax, and so those projects have given me some really remarkable perspective on capital raising in for the community. Um, but one of the things that I've seen for the last several years that has been concerning to me has been the lack of private capital and the involvement of private capital in community projects. We're really reliant, especially here on the East Coast, it seems, we're really reliant on government to initiate things and to put capital behind it in order for it to move forward. And so there tends to be this over reliance on government being the ultimate stakeholder that says yes and it gets things moving. And that's really concerning to me because that really diminishes the agency of local change makers, local investors, local, people who care about their local businesses and local communities. And so I became interested in the CEDIF program a number of years ago because it seemed like a really powerful way in which to um, mobilize that community capital and direct it towards particular outcomes that would allow us to address some of these very serious shortfalls. Because as Andy was pointing out, like Nova Scotians invest about $1 billion a year in RRSPs, and the vast majority of that flows out of the jurisdiction and benefits places like Ontario and New York and elsewhere. And that's like how can we build a more vibrant, resilient society if almost all of our savings are leaving Nova Scotia? It's just not possible for us to be more resilient and to be more proactive in terms of economic development and our cultural and community development. If we're not putting some money, perhaps like we're talking about 5 or 10% of our portfolio would make such a huge difference in terms of providing that local liquidity for local businesses, but also for giving change makers the opportunity, the startup capital way to put forward ideas and visions for new businesses and new cooperatives. That is so crucial for the future of our province. And so the idea behind Backr was really to create a commons, to create an environment online where people could post, their CEDIF, their Community Economic Development Investment Fund. It could be a business or it could be a fund itself, and to connect those CEDIFs with investors, a stable of investors who are looking to make local investments that align with their values. And the idea is that not only do we create this commons, this place where people can gather and peruse and make decisions to invest locally, but also we're going to work closely with those what we refer to as issuer clients, the people the organizations and change makers we're working with to try and bring these CEDIFs to market. Because as Andy alluded to in his presentation, that the process of actually launching a CEDIF is quite complicated and quite challenging. It is meant to be far less onerous than if you were doing an initial public offering, or if you're an exempt market dealer, for example. There's a lot of requirements by the Securities Commission. The CEDIF process simplifies those requirements, but nonetheless, it is still quite an onerous and challenging project to go through yourself without any help. And so Backr is envisioned as being, in a way, sort of a venture studio, in addition to being what will become a platform for CEDIFs and what we envision eventually become an equity crowdfunding platform. And so what we're really looking to try and accomplish here is, create this nexus point where we help organizations in Nova Scotia develop their business plan and develop their fund offering, and then make it available for investors to consider for local investment. And if we can change Nova Scotians' habits this way by putting this mechanism online for local people to utilize, then maybe we can start changing that dynamic where so much of our savings flow out of the province and benefit other jurisdictions. And we can start changing that narrative, and we can get people thinking like, well, maybe I can set aside a small portion of my portfolio to help local businesses that I believe in, that I want to try and support. So that is the essential vision of Backr. The business plan for Backr is quite straightforward. We envision ourselves taking a 6% brokerage fee on any transaction that we facilitate through the platform. We take a 1% closing fee for legal costs, and then this is negotiable, depends on how advanced the fund or the business is in terms of their fundraising prowess and their experience raising capital and creating the offering document and all that. We offer services to help with not only launching the CEDIF, but also administering the CEDIF over the next 5 years. And we envision taking a 5% management and communications fee on the capital raised to support our efforts to be there and supportive of these local funds and businesses that are offering on the Backr platform. So the recap there, that means basically we're looking at taking about 12% of the total capital raise. So if we raise $1 million in collaboration with you or your organization, then Backr would take $120,000. and that funding would go towards our operations and allowing us to remain in support of that organization. So you're not having to deal with the communications with investors, the communications with the Securities Commission, the communications with the Department of Finance. You're not having to deal with that all on your own. We really want to make sure that this we take some of the complexity out of this process, and we make people feel as though they can be empowered to launch a major offering on the Backr platform.
Hmm.
So
Mark,
yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, please go ahead.
No, I just before we open it up to questions to the group, and I would expect most of the questions will probably go to you, but could you just walk me through, like, so I'm a business owner. I've got a business corporation. I want to raise some equity capital.
Yep.
Walk it through with me. Like, what would you do with, like, how would you help me? Like, what would actually happen?
Well, so the first thing is that we would have to look at the business model, and the key thing here is that CEDIFs, as you pointed out, Andy, are they're equity investments. There is an expectation then that the business will be eventually successful and start generating dividends. So this is very important for folks, like, that this is not a charitable activity. This is about building businesses that can thrive for the long term. And so the business plan we would develop in collaboration with the business owner or the cooperative owner or what have you. And then on top of that, one of the other most important things is helping build the team. As you pointed out, Andy, the CEDIF program requires that there be a minimum of six directors, on the board of directors, and they all have to come from Nova Scotia. And so this team is going to be quite critical to establishing your vision and also establishing your bona fides and raising capital and showing that you have the backing of the community. And another very important thing to keep in mind is that no CEDIF can be owned more than 20% by any one individual or organization. So this is something that I've struggled with a little bit. It adds further complexity, but it does mean that the CEDIF is broadly owned amongst the community, especially once you open it up and start selling shares to individual investors across Nova Scotia. They'll have, you know, ownership in your fund or business, which I think is quite exciting. I think we need to see more of that. A lot of people end up working in businesses and they're sort of in a cocoon, doing their own thing without, proper guidance and feedback from the marketplace. And by having investors, you have people who are really dedicated to and interested in your success. They want to see you do well, and they want to provide, they'll hopefully provide further support and guidance as you go along in terms of launching your business. And we want to, again, create that sense of co-ownership through the Backr platform. So yeah, that just in terms of starting things up, those are just some of the steps that we would take. And then, as you mentioned, we have to get the letter of non-objection from the Securities Commission. So there's a lot of back and forth. There's a need for legal representation really here. Frankly, we can help in certain ways and reducing legal costs, but at some point you will need to have a lawyer help in reviewing your offering document. So we'd help with all of these steps along the way to help you get there. So again, you're not feeling alone and broaching such a difficult endeavor.
Great. Thanks, Mark. We'll have a question here from Dean. He says, Mark, to your point about connecting local investment and investors, I'm a retired financial advisor and understand the difficulty of getting investments such as you described, approved for offer to clients. There are massive pools of investments and appetite for small businesses and portfolios. Is Backr a licensed dealer or some other type of approval by the Nova Scotia Security Commission?
Great question. So we are not licensed. We're doing something a bit different here. Basically, we're utilizing the CEDIF program to operate a platform that offers multiple CEDIFs. And so we have applied to the Securities Commission for an exemption order that allows us to operate in this fashion. And then the plan is to eventually become an exempt market dealer and to offer a full equity crowdfunding platform through Backr and to start offering that in other parts of Canada. So in a way, like the Nova Scotia, this CEDIF approach we're taking is meant to it's kind of a bit of a Trojan horse. It's a way we're allowed to offer these securities in this very limited fashion to get started and prove the viability of the model. So, Dean, does that answer your question?
Somewhat. I understand. Excuse me. I understand the challenges involved in getting a product approved for market, but I don't quite understand how Backr is like. What bridge are you using there to, like say, if I or someone else as an investor contacted Backr and said, "Hey, I'm kind of interested in one or two or some of your product offerings." How do you kind of move it from that stage to an actual investment?
That's a very good question too. So we are going to be operating. We're working with a Nova Scotia-based company called Particle Capital, and they have white label fractional investing software that we will be licensing and using, and so it will mean that you will log in and you'll have a profile on the platform, and you'll be able to peruse the different investment offerings. And then if you are interested in investing, then you'll be able to make the investment via the platform right there directly. And so we'll be relying on their expertise. They've already launched a number of these white label equity crowdfunding platforms in the past, and we'll be working with this team to make the process of investing as seamless as possible.
So are they a licensed securities dealer, or how do they, excuse me, how do they relate to the Securities Commission?
So they are not licensed through the Nova Scotia Securities Commission. We would have the funds. So any money that, for example, that goes through a CEDIF that's offered on our platform would go into an in-trust account. And so we're being governed by the CEDIF guidelines that have been established by the Nova Scotia government. And so we're launching a series of CEDIFs and putting those CEDIFs on the platform and to connect investors with those particular CEDIFs that are being offered. So we're not officially operating as an equity crowdfunding platform, not as of yet.
Well, is Backr a CEDIF? And are you an actual, is your company an actual CEDIF?
That's correct. We are offering ourselves as a CEDIF, and we'll be launching in January, and we're aiming to raise $300,000 for the development of our platform.
Obviously, CEDIF is kind of approving this process.
That's right. The Securities Commission and the Department of Finance are in the later stages of approving our submission.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And Mark, as I understand it, so Backr is a kind of multi-sided platform in the sense that you've got the the value that you offer to individual investors, as you've just described, going through the platform, but you've also got that bundle of services that go to invest to the companies that are looking to raise that capital. So you help them get to the point where they can actually be listed on your platform. You're getting them through that offering document, development of the offering document, to get the letter of non-objection, to and facilitate the whole process. So you have kind of like two different sets of constituents that you're kind of seeking to serve through that platform.
That's exactly it. That's why we like to refer to, we have our investors and then we have our issuer clients. And
Right.
the issuer clients are these organizations or individuals who are looking to raise capital. And we want to walk them through that process and do as good a job as possible in terms of demystifying the process. And just to go back to what Dean was asking about earlier in terms of the we did consider other options. There is, for example, National Instrument 45110, which is a startup fundraising exemption So there are other options for us to pursue, but we made the decision. The really interesting thing about what we're doing with Backr is that essentially we're going to be the first platform in North America to offer tax incentives to investors. Now, there's like about 84 equity crowdfunding platforms operating in the United States right now. There's about 97 in Europe. In Canada, there's about six or seven. It's a really underdeveloped market. And there is no other platform in North America offering tax incentives to investors. So we're deliberately going this direction. Instead of using the National Instrument 45110 or going down some other different roads of, like as I mentioned, we do eventually want to become an exempt market dealer, but that's a very challenging process, and you have to have a lot of infrastructure in place in order to proceed that way. This seemed like a simpler way of moving forward and offering something of great value to investors.
Mm. Yeah. We have a couple of questions from Lisa from the Purposeful Group. First question was, who is we? When you're saying we, maybe that's the first question.
Great question. So the group that the founding group of that is the brains behind Backr. That includes myself. Andy is on the board as a representative of the Center for Local Prosperity. And we have Colette O'Hara, who is the owner of the August House in Windsor. And we have Greg Nazir, who's a professor of finance at Dalhousie. We have Lewis Smith, who's the former general counsel of Emira. And we have Chris Kroll, who's the general partner and general manager, I should say, of Tidal Venture Partners, which is a venture capital firm based in Halifax. And then as well, we're in very early discussions with, I shouldn't say early at this point, they're quite advanced discussions. Paul, do you mind if I mention about Paul Langdon? Do you mind if I mention about our discussions?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please do.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. We're in discussions with Ulnaweg Development Group for them to join us and be involved with the project as well. We're very excited to have them involved, and to give folks a sense of the kinds of investment products we'll be having on the platform. We are in early stages of developing an Indigenous Entrepreneurs Fund in collaboration with Ulnaweg. And as well, we're looking at launching a grocery fund, and we're looking at launching an affordable housing fund. So those are some of the early options to give you a sense of what kinds of offerings we'll have on the platform later in 2026 and into 2027.
Yeah. And all these funds will be CEDIFs themselves. So
That's
they're
right.
made of. Lisa's second question was, the website indicates regional info sessions in certain communities. Can you tell me more about those? Is this a good first step for an organization interested in your support?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we're really interested in trying to serve businesses, cooperatives, and local, organizations that are trying to raise capital for projects ranging from businesses to social enterprise to initiatives that can, improve local infrastructure. It's And I mean, one of the really exciting things about this capital we're talking about, which is democratically raised capital, is that it provides guidance for government funding, whether it's federal, provincial, municipal. This is community-led capital that then, can be leveraged to raise much more funding from other sources. And it gives license in a way to those decision makers at the government level saying, oh, this has backing from the community. This is something we should get behind.
Great. Got a question from Erica Ralston from the Rural Communities Foundation, Nova Scotia. This is hard for me to understand. You mentioned an affordable housing fund that would be a CEDIF, but there is no profit to be made in affordable housing. How can a charitable activity be a CEDIF?
Oh, that's a good question, Erica. Important to note that this is not a charity, and affordable housing can be developed where it is profitable, it obviously is less profitable than a traditional, developer that would be pursued by a developer. And so the key thing would be to try and align the Affordable Housing Fund with the requirements of the CMHC, or Build Canada Homes, which is the new organization. So, for example, um, an affordable housing project can be considered an affordable housing project if it has a minimum of 20 units, or 20% of its units, I should say, 20% of its units that are set aside for affordable housing. Now, it can be higher than that. Like there's a project in Halifax being developed with the Roman Catholic Archdiocese, and they've set the stipulation to higher. They said 60% of the units have to be affordable housing. So I think we'd be looking at something maybe in the same vicinity. It's like you're able to balance, the market housing with the affordable housing. And if you can come up with a business model that makes sense within the context of raising money through the CEDIF, then that can be acceptable. Now, as Andy pointed out earlier, the organization has to have a certain size. It needs to have a minimum of 6 employees in order to raise this kind of capital. Um, I'd love to see that changed. The CEDIF program has not been reformed in 25 years. So I'd really love to press the government to make more accommodations for affordable housing, because I think it would be a game changer if people could invest directly in affordable housing and receive these generous tax incentives. Then I think it would go a long way in generating the affordable housing we need, which is in serious demand here in Nova Scotia. Like less than 2% of our housing stock is affordable housing owned by the government, and that's below the national average of 3.5%, and it's well below the OECD average of 7%. So we need to be investing in affordable housing, and it's the CEDA program, I think, could be the vehicle to do it.
Thanks. I just want to open it up to the other folks that are on the call today. If you've got a question or a comment you want to make.
Erica's got another question in the chat there.
It's a little bit of almost a rhetorical statement, right? Like at the beginning in Andy's presentation, talked about, since 1999, there's been 50 plus CEDIFs. So that's 25 years. That's like about 2 a year for that entire time.
It's a good
it
insight.
feels feels like there should be more.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm happy to address that. That's a really good point. There has been a decline in the use of CEDIFs in recent years. There was a heyday about 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, where the number of CEDIFs being launched were more in the range of around 12 to 15 per year. And they were raising sometimes as much as $13 million a year, 13, $14 million a year. And then in 2015, the government eliminated the confit program, which was a special feed-in tariff for wind farms. And so that caused that the confit program with the CEDA program made it very attractive to local investors to invest in local wind farms. And it produced a boom in wind energy that we should be all very proud of. But unfortunately, they eliminated the confit program, which made it less secure for investors. And so then there was a decline in wind farms moving forward. And then as well in 2015, the government they eliminated the entire Department of Economic Development, which was a major mistake. And they eliminated positions that were in place to help provide support for people who wanted to launch CEDIFs. And so ever since then, we've never really recovered. There are probably about 3 or 4 CEDIFs offered per year now, Farmworks being one of them. We'd like to see that double, if not triple, if we could, in offering more CEDIFs through the Backr platform.
Yeah. Even at its peak, the provincial government had one full-time person promoting this program, Chris Payne.
Yeah.
And Chris has been gone for 10 years. So yeah, it's fallen to people like Linda Best at FarmWorks to kind of be the ambassador for CEDIFs. If people have questions, they talk to her. Thankfully, with the entrance of Backr, I think that's a direct attempt to try to provide that kind of support and to make it, if not easier to get this kind of investment going.
Yep.
I see that Ryan Gibson, who is himself a noted expert on social finance and financing, just shared a report here, comparison of CEDIF equivalent programs across the country.
Oh, cool.
Thanks, Ryan. Ryan, anything you want to weigh in on? I know this is your bread and butter, your research area. So,
it's fascinating. I think it's really exciting because one of the biggest challenges with CEDIF and CEDIF equivalent programs has been that capacity side of it, is navigating the Securities Commission, doing the back office components that really just takes the wind out of the sail of local practitioners who want to do good things. They don't want to deal with the onslaught of the Security Commission. They just want to get things done. And so that's one of the key learnings when we looked across the country, was that these supports don't often exist. They rest within local champions who, have many scars and battles that they've fought on this front. But there is this need for resources, for support, but the potential is astronomical. The potential impact for communities, and as I think you mentioned, Andy, the notion that we have this wealth simply sitting in our communities already, this is just reinvesting and re-embedding wealth that otherwise would be going to Toronto, London, New York, or who knows where around the world. And if we could capture 5% of that, it would have a tremendous impact on community economic development, let alone if we could capture 15 or 20% of that. Which brought me to one of the questions that I was going to type into the box, but just had not got my fingers to the keyboard enough, is around this notion of gatekeepers. And often when we talk about personal finance and investment, we have some gatekeepers that are often either in banks or in private investment advisors. And just wondering what the sense is, Marc, in terms of your work with Backr. What's the relationship to those sorts of gatekeepers that are often those that are providing guidance to individuals around where to put their money, how to do it? Because sometimes we can get gatekeepers that say, CEDIFs are a bad investment. You're better off to go into the money markets or to do X or to do Y. Just curious.
It's a great question.
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, it's the gatekeepers are definitely how do I put this? Like there is trepidation, about CEDIFs, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about, how CEDIFs have both a good and bad reputation over the years that have been, that's been garnered because of some notable successes and some notable failures. For example, the Seaport Farmers Market was a very ambitious project that raised millions of dollars from local investors. And unfortunately, I think the business model was not properly thought through. It wasn't strong enough in order to stand on its own two legs, and the project ended up basically all these leasehold improvements were made to the port, and then the port of Halifax took possession of all those improvements. So we're still left with, this improved building, and it's used for a number of different purposes. It's not really used for a farmer's market anymore. But it was an example of where people put their money in and were frustrated that they didn't get further tax incentives. And it just, it's something that's kind of stuck in the craw of a number of local investors. And we have to be really careful with this. We have to try and get out there and, um, make it clear to folks that these are high risk investments, so that we're going to have some of these failures along the way. We have to become more, you know, we have to become more understanding and have greater risk tolerance. But at the same time, we need to ensure that the greatest potential of success for those CEDIFs that are being launched now, that we can learn from those past mistakes and put forward viable business measures that hopefully will pass the test for these local gatekeepers. It's hard though, because like as you're saying, like a lot of them don't look at CEDIFs as being viable. So we have to kind of change the dynamic here and saying like people should really be investing a certain percentage of their portfolio here locally if they can afford the risk, and that this is a viable way for them to invest locally and then receive all these tax incentives that help reduce the risk overall. So I don't know if I'm really answering your question too well, Ryan, but I just want to say that there's still a lot of concern out there about CEDIFs, and it's going to be a big part of our job is to be convincing people that this is a viable way to invest locally and receive these incentives.
Yeah, and what I would just building on that comment, Mark, I would say with the financial planners and that profession, I think the goal here is not to replace them. Like it's to complement. Like the people will put the bulk of their investments with much safer, more predictable investments, and as they should, because they're providing for their future. And CEDIFs are a high risk investment. Like you shouldn't put your entire portfolio in a CEDIF because you may well lose it. But if we're talking like that 5% figure, like if an investment planner were like, well, okay, I've got some high net worth individuals, they're well set for everything, and they're looking for something to leave a legacy. That a CEDIF might provide that opportunity to invest in their local community and feel that they're doing something more than just financial. So, I mean, I often will describe CEDIFs as a form of social finance in that sense, that it's not strictly about the money. It's about creating social impact through your investment. The folks who invest in farm works are not doing it because they want to make a killing. They're doing it because they want to support the local food system. And so it's a way that, it's a complement to the investment planner industry, not a replacement of it. I think that's a way to kind of a real and appropriate framing for this thing. We have time for one more question? Erica's got a couple. Which one do you want to go with, Erica? You got one question.
I got one question. Is there a network of angel investors in Nova Scotia?
Very good question. We're in discussions with Invest Nova Scotia. Supposedly, Invest Nova Scotia is setting up a network of angel investors across the province. The person to speak to about that is Bob Pelley, Pelley. Anyways, he has been working on this for the last year or so. I haven't spoken to Bob in a few weeks' time now, or maybe even a few months, but I plan to check in with him again very soon. So,
great.
Thank you, and curse you for making me choose one question.
Yes, we're slaves to time. So we're coming up to the top of the hour here. We're gonna wrap up. First of all, thank you, Marc, for coming here, and we look forward to seeing how things unfold with Backr. I think it's been a long time coming. I remember when we first started conversations about it, I was so excited because it's something that's been so needed, I think, for so long. And look forward to seeing how that rolls out. We will be putting the recording of this webinar will go on the Center for Local Prosperity website. So easy to access and to see. We'll also put a few resources along with that webinar recording, notably the Nova Scotia CEDIF guide, which I referenced in my presentation. I think if you're an aspiring a company looking to aspiring to create a CEDIF, and you read through that excellent resource, you'll come away from like, holy smokes, that's a lot of work. I need some help with that. So I think it will, as good as a resource as it is, it will underline the importance of a company like Backr that will help you navigate that multi-step process of going from kind of scratch to a functioning CEDIF. So thanks everybody for coming. We'll see. We're gonna take a pause in December. We won't be doing a webinar in December, but in January we're going to be coming back, and the last Thursday of the month we'll be doing a session on civic engagement and direct and deep democracy. So we'll have a panel, I think, of 3 people. It'll be really interesting. And then in February we're going to be featuring the transition movement locally and abroad. And then in March we're going to be doing a session focusing on upskilling, so on all the various efforts that are being done to have people teaching practical skills to their members of their community. So
yeah, Andy, can you mention the community of practice as well? Like you just put it in the
yes, yeah. And so we've just introduced this now, that the week after, so this is our webinars of the last Thursday of the month. The first Thursday of the month at the same time at noon, we have a community of practice conversation. So it's really just the folks who want to come to talk about whether it's the webinar topic or not, but just they're active and involved and interested in economic localization and economic development, and we host that conversation on the first Thursday of the month at noon. So next one will be next week at noon. So we hope maybe you have an open invitation for that, and hopefully we'll see you there.
Yeah.
Thanks,
everybody. Thank you, Eddie.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. All right, take care. Bye-bye.